Is my slide visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to segregate my today's topic into two parts. Pandemic mutation of textile industry will be the first half, and the second half will be on enzymatic processing. Without much delay, let's just go on directly into the topic. So the first is on pandemic mutation of textile industry. By mutation, we are just going to see about what are the transformations or any changes that has happened in the textile industry after the pandemic.
Yes, ma'am. Slide is visible, ma'am.
Did you hear me? I started already.
Yes, ma'am. I can hear it.
Okay, shall I just go ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Looking into the impact of COVID-19, the whole world is fighting with the COVID-19 pandemic, which has left no stone unturned in jolting almost all the countries of the world. Governments, businesses, and communities are facing the brunt of coronavirus pandemic. Besides the innumerable lives that have been lost as a result of this pandemic, another important consequence that the world is facing is the heavy toll on the economy. This economic carnage has percolated into various businesses operating in and around the world, that is travel, hospitality, restaurants, automobiles, and whatnot. And textile industry is just no exception. Indian textile and apparel industry accounts for approximately 4% of the global textile market. It's one of the largest and the most important sectors for the Indian economy in terms of output, foreign exchange earnings, and employment. The industry contributes approximately 7% to industrial output in value terms, 2% to the GDP, and 5% to the export earnings. So here in this session, let's just discuss about the impact of this black swan event. So we call it as a black swan event because it's causing so much of havoc to all the people here. Uh, what is the effect of this black swan event? What has it done or what it is going to do on the apparel industry in India, which is regarded as the second highest employment generator after agriculture. So, looking into the impact of COVID on the Indian textile and apparel industry, with COVID-19 hitting Italy in the midst of Milan Fashion Week in late February and leading to cancellation of major fashion events across the globe, the effects of this pandemic began to trickle down to the Indian textile industry. Fashion weeks were cancelled in Shanghai, Melbourne, Beijing, Seoul, and Tokyo. Moreover, a few retailers such as Victoria's Secret, Pink, and TJX closed their e-commerce sites temporarily. Many prominent apparel retailers across the globe, such as H&M, Nike, Apple, Walmart, they also responded to COVID-19 by shuttering their doors. What does this mean? This means no business. And so the fashion industry is one of the worst affected industries because of this pandemic. When we consider about the labor force and employment, as per experts, it's been widely speculated that a significant number of people in the world are bound to lose their jobs or already have faced it as a means of cut costs amid the health exigency. In fact, according to a recent note from the International Labour Organization titled COVID-19 and the World of Work, Impact and Policy Responses, the coronavirus crisis will have far-reaching impact on labour market outcomes. The UN body estimates that the virus will be pushing millions of people into unemployment, underemployment, and working poverty, with almost 25 million jobs being lost worldwide as a result of COVID-19. So when you look at the chart, you can see there are about 1.7 billion people working in services. So this gives you the whole population of the world. And about 1.4 billion are working in agriculture, 800 million in industrial jobs, and 577 million people are older than 64, and the 430 are unemployed, 400 millions are entrepreneurs, and 1.9 billion are youngsters that is within the age of 0 to 15. So by looking into this chart, what they say is except the people who are working in agriculture, except this 1.4 billion, almost the rest, that is about 5 billion, will be affected by this pandemic. So they include even the children and the elderly people because if either their parents or the sons or daughters are unemployed, so their future will also be what will be a question mark, right? So this is the current panicking situation ahead of the whole world. So they say that about 5 billion people will be living with an unknown future. The textile and clothing sector is labor and capital intensive. So this all of us know. And it provides direct employment to over 45 million people. The nationwide lockdown, which happened last month or so, had led to a temporary closure of factories, and layoffs had already begun among mainly the low wage workers were the ones who were affected. Majority of workers are migrant laborers and they have all started to return to their native places. With the total disruption in workflow and production schedule, the industry is facing its worst ever crisis. It hasn't faced a situation before like this. So next, when we look into the import and export, so definitely the COVID-19 pandemic is primarily going to affect the exports because this doesn't involve India alone. So overall, everywhere the problem is there. And with the second order impact will be on the domestic markets. So both these markets will be affected because of reduction in the sales, both in the export as well as in the domestic side. So first, let's look into how it affects the export market. A recent report that was calibrated by Wazir advisors impact of COVID-19 scenario on European and the US apparel market estimates that the combined apparel consumption of the European Union and the US might fall to about 308 billion US dollars, which is 40 to 45% lower than the projected consumption in 2020. This will be a tough time for Indian apparel exporters because 60% of our exports are destined mainly for the European and the US markets. Apart from this, whatever orders were already given are also being cancelled, or either the orders are being delayed. And this means you're going to build up on the inventory in your unit. So, what you have produced will be there, or you would have already purchased your raw materials, you would have invented and all that. So, all those will be piled up in the units. And also, what the money you can expect from the export will also be delayed. So it's going to affect the units. They have to invest more on capital. So they've already invested, and now to start a new production, they have to invest more. So this impact will especially severely affect the higher things like your luxury fabrics and embroidery because the basic ones people will always need to buy it. So for suppliers to fast fashion, mass or retail, there might be still some hope. So this we are talking about not right now. Once the COVID is over and then everything opens up, even after that, the luxury fabrics will be affected a lot, but the basic ones might initially have some difficulty. So they will be better off than the luxury fabrics, but even they, at least there will be some smaller orders and the profit margin will also be very less. Looking into the domestic side, so not only the extrinsic woes like the export problems is there, textile companies in India are also facing a number of their own challenges. Domestic consumption was also impacted due to all India closure. So once we know that 1 month we had nothing moving about and all that, so even the domestic consumption was very low. And this lockdown imposed by the government in the country has led to the loss of about 1 lakh crores, says the Clothing Manufacturers Association of India. And we already talked about the loss of jobs for so many million people. So, what would that mean? There will be no income or income losses for the workers. And subsequently, when there's no income, what will happen? The consumption will be low. And once the consumption is low, then naturally the business and the economies will be affected. Because why the consumption is getting low means because the people they find more important things like your grocery or your medicine or staples. They prefer to invest on that instead of your apparels, which are not the necessity basic things. This is also due to This can also be due to uncertain economic scenario. So you don't know how your future is going to be, how the next month is going to be, or about 3 months from now is going to be. So what happens? You prefer to save your money or invest it on the most necessary things. And the third point will be limited product options. So even people who are conducting marriages right now say when they go to shops, they don't find many varieties of silk sarees. Only the old ones are there because no production or no new trends have come in, right? So even because of this, people don't prefer to buy right now. And the other one is reduction in occasion. So we don't have any gatherings, no social occasions. So when you're not going out, you're mostly sitting at home. So you don't want to buy new clothes. So because of all this, the domestic purchase is also being affected. And another important point we have to think over is that in China, after the more opening of the market after the COVID-19 crisis, the apparel garment retailing has witnessed a 59% decline, but on the other hand, food and other businesses have revived. So this is another point we have to keep in mind. And Mehta, the MD of Emma Textile, says the demand in apparel may shrink by almost 40% in 2020. So we are already in the mid 20s. So further in the next 6 months, also he says it will be reduced by about 40%. He also adds that around 81% of manufacturers have received cancellation orders from their buyers already. And even if you see the retails and other brands have stopped, they have halted the production lines because already the inventories are there in the stores, or they have at least delayed the season releases to cut on the buying budgets. So they're preparing for these events already. Of course, with few garments being made, there will be less demand for fabrics as well. So even the textile manufacturing industries are also going to be affected. So overall, we can see a gloomy situation right now. Right now. And new store openings have stopped, and even domestic stores are facing an inventory build-up. So not only in the export areas, even domestic areas, we find that the inventory is building up in the stores. Further, domestic prices could be negatively impacted because you cannot export. So even what the exporters will do, they will try to dump their inventories over here. So for the domestic market, there will be just a reduced margin of profit. Apart from this, the other hurdles that we face are the cash flow constraints. The sector has already been grappling with profitability issues due to sharp decline in yarn exports or cheaper imports from other countries, etc. These issues are only aggravated with the current crisis of the COVID-19. And the next important point is your supply chain disruption. So you don't have much of travel or much of logistics between places. So earlier people would have purchased from anywhere they want, but now you have to restrict it to somewhere within the local areas where your transport or logistics would be possible. And here, the main people who would be affected would be the weaker players. So the bigger concerns, they would be able to manage at least for quite some time. The weaker players, that is, I mean, the smaller industries or the medium ones will be the most affected because already there's low demand and they have to pay the rent, they have to pay the overhead charges, they have to pay their what is the interest for their loans and so on. So they will be the most affected. Is everything fine, Anita? Can I just proceed?
Yes, ma'am. It's everything
Okay.
is fine, ma'am.
Okay. Am I fast or I can just go on the same pace?
Yes, ma'am. You can carry on, ma'am.
Okay. So next, let's just have a glimpse of situation in Tirupur. So we know Tirupur is a place where brands have about 58% of their supplier base. And the situation in Tirupur is no different. So just whatever points we saw earlier is going to be repeated here. The coronavirus outbreak has dealt a shattering blow to the garment industry in Tirupur. The industry dealt with its first blow after its business was curtailed by the cancellation of massive exporters' orders as coronaviruses engulfed European countries, China, and Italy. But now, with a pandemic in India, its domestic business is also hampered. The manufacturing units are struggling to maintain their workforce. Most of the workers here are migrant laborers. Apparel brands are cancelling or postponing orders and delaying payments. This leads to suppliers laying off or suspending workers without any paid leave or social benefits. The units cannot also do anything because they don't have a business, they just cannot pay the workers and keep them there. This is further pushing the vulnerable workers towards more social and economic disparities. But just to look on to the positive side, The Tirupur garment cluster sees opportunities in PPEs and masks. Amid lack of export orders or cancellation of some of the existing orders by major buyers from the US and the Europe, and coupled with the liquidity crisis, Tirupur's knitwear ready-made garment cluster saw huge opportunity in making PPEs and face masks of different types as its member units started getting huge orders from the government, which were going through the coronavirus challenges. So we know Tirupur is always quick and adaptive to changes. So similarly here, they started shifting. And Mr. Raja Shanmugam, the president of TEA, states, we are much competitive when compared to China, and we have the capacity and capability to make PPE kits at one-third of the cost. China was actually giving the kits at a rate of about 1,500, but here Tirupur is producing it at a rate of about from 200 to 600. So that varies depending upon whether it's a basic type or whether it is the advanced kits. And actually, they started off with a smaller order from a local district in Tamil Nadu, and then the cluster started getting increasing orders of PPEs and masks from not only Tamil Nadu government but also neighboring states like Telangana, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, even from Assam and Meghalaya. So the units right now in Tirupur are making ordinary face masks to N95 respirators to N95 user manual and complete disposable full cover PPE kits, which are completely sterilized and given antibacterial treatment. The fabrics used in making these kits ensure that the virus cannot penetrate it. So the fabrics that they use for this are non-woven fabrics of different types. It can be either an ordinary non-woven fabric or a 3-layered one or a 5-layered one, and even some of them are laminated. And all these fabrics are approved by Citra. Even the kits that are produced in Tirupur are being approved by Citra. And Citra's lab, is known for its medical textile, and it's one of the 4 major labs that are approved by the government. Moreover, all these units have been given permission. So all these units who are making the masks and PPEs have been given permission by the government, and they are considered as essential commodities. So they come under the essential commodity list now. And Mr. Raja Shanmugam also adds that this pandemic has given them an opportunity to enter into technical textiles in a big way. Already, the Union Ministry has been stressing on Tirupur to just shift to technical textiles, and this pandemic has paved the way for that. And this also enables an additional income to the units, he says, because the PPE kits and masks are now in high demand. And he says it can even be it can come in line with the garments which they were already preparing and exporting globally. So they are already receiving inquiries from the US and Europe and even from brands like Marks and Spencers for medical kits. But right now, the government has banned the export of these kits, so they are not able to tap this opportunity. And he hopes that once the export has been allowed, Tirupur units will see orders coming from across the globe. And since this is a disposable item, and already foreigners, they are very they're used to having these disposable things, and these things cannot be repeatedly used. So they use it only for a few hours. So there will be maximum need for this reward. To add on to some more points on Tirupur, currently there are about 100 units that are engaged in making PPEs, masks of different nature to meet state government requirements. So far, they have supplied over 2 million pieces of masks and 500,000 units of PPEs, which are given to healthcare workers, hospital staff, surgeons, senior doctors, frontline workers who are fighting against COVID-19. With more and more orders pouring in, we can see that more units will be getting into this medical needs. So these are just pictures of, this is not exactly in Tirupur, this is from some other country. So the personal protective equipment such as facial mask, gloves and gowns is required at an unprecedented scale. So much is needed these days. And even the government doctors are complaining that they are not getting sufficient kits to protect themselves. And this shortage will be a danger to those workers. So to address this global shortage of PPE, textile factories are switching from their regular production, like your knitwear or t-shirts, they're shifting on to masks and gloves and overalls and so on. So the production meeting the demand and specification of PPE related to COVID, and this means that the people who are losing jobs will also get an opportunity. So the industry can also continue with its business. So looking ahead, so everything will come to an end, right? So there will be some period, maybe it's about 3 months or maybe it's after 6 months, this coronavirus will stop or its effect will be reduced. And when we look into after that, the world will not be the same. According to specialists, once this dust settles on, the apparel industry will face a recessionary market. When I say a recessionary market, I mean that people will not be as extravagant as they were. So definitely because the money will be less, they have lost their work jobs and so on. So they will think of buying or investing more on what to say, the more fashionable items or the high trendy items. So they will mainly go on to the classics or the basics or the most needed ones. So the manufacturers, we have to take that into consideration. One of the reasons for it is their economic issue, as I already told, and again, the long-lasting change in consumer behavior. So overall, the consumer behavior itself would have changed, mainly due to the social distancing and preference for sanitized products. For the textile industry, it's very important to recover. You have to get the trust of your consumers. The demand for hygiene textiles will be very high. Whether it be your apparel wear or home textiles, whether it be knit or woven, whether it be for the kids or the older people, whether it be a formal or casual, everything you have to build in your hygiene if you want to increase your market. This trust building will be key with consumers to regain business at the earliest. And finishes will also have a major role to play here. So antimicrobial or antiviral and antibacterial finishes can be given. Even water repellent. So we say this what is the particle that comes out for the mouth or something is what's causing the infection. So even water repellent finishes, and sometimes when you wear it, you need hydrophilic finishes inside, or anti-odor, anti-sweating, anti-pilling. This will mainly avoid entrapping of microbes. And PU coated ones, it may be either in your denim or your gloves or anything. And even soil release finish and much more like this could also help in making your uh, garments or fabric more hygienic. And another important point is the consumer sentiment. So just imagine. So now, okay, all the malls are closed. Once the malls are opened, do you think we as consumers would go in very casually and coolly as we did before into the crowded mall to do your shopping? No, we will definitely give a second thought. Yes. And apart from that, mainly in India, we people are used to trial. So without trial, we don't want to purchase any dress. But after the COVID-19 crisis, consumers will be uncomfortable to touch and feel garments in retail stores. We would be nervous. ஐயோ யார் இதுக்கு முன்னாடி இதை தொட்டாங்கன்னு தெரியலையே அப்படின்ட்டு நம்மளுக்கு அந்த ஒரு பயம் இருக்கும். So this is actually said by the founder of Genealogia, who's a Spanish sustainable textile technology provider. Although we are talking about all this, there are some comforting prospects as well. On the brighter side, a number of countries around the world, such as the USA and Japan, have decided to learn lessons from this calamity and look for alternative production sources other than China. And so this is a good news for us. And India should capitalize on this situation and present itself as a credible alternative to increase its textile and apparel export share. What are the steps to be taken by the industries? The manufacturers need to maximize their internal capabilities and focus on building their efficiencies. If they want to emerge as a better option than competitors like Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Cambodia. Although we say people do not want to get things from China, but we have strong competition from places like this, that is Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Vietnam. So we have to improve ourselves to battle with them. They must also incorporate digital strategy in the buying process. Again, this digital is very important here. They should also think about markets other than US and Europe. So we don't need to stick on to the old ones. We can think of other markets like Japan and South Korea. Okay, so I've been just talking about so much of statistics. I would like to go on to a lighter side. So can you see the slide here? Do you like the dress? Can you just, anyone of you guess what is the speciality of this dress? Okay, so I'm not able to see any of your chat, so let me just proceed along with this. So the person whom you see here on the screen is actually an Australian dancer, Miss Peary. So she was working for a cruise which was supposed to travel through the Antarctica towards South America. But in the mid-March, the COVID-19 pandemic also caught up with them. So the voyage took an unexpected turn. So all the boundaries were closed, so they were not able to get down anywhere. So they were stuck in the ship for about 60 days. They had to go along with so much of multiple quarantines. The outbreak of coronavirus symptoms was there. Many of the crew as well as the passengers were affected. And finally, they just disembarked from the crew, and Perry went back to Perth, her hometown. But it was mandatory for her to be quarantined in the hotel room for 2 weeks. She was so frustrated already, 60 days of quarantine in the ship, and here about 15 days quarantine here. So she wanted to do something. She wanted to keep herself active and engaged during this strange time. So Peary, she actually decided to get creative. And what was her only source was that. So daily from the hotel, she was getting meals the 3 times, and her meals were served in big paper bags. So these paper bags kept piling up. So this was her inspiration. So she decided to make fashion outfits out of these paper bags. Okay. So she constructed fashion costumes out of whatever she got. That is the paper bags, the what napkins present there, or the cutlery like the spoon or fork, the disposable containers she got, and all that. She just made use of scissors, sticky tape, and roll of cotton to make her costume. She first made a tennis appropriate outfit that included a racket and then a wizard, and she named it Maria Paperkova. And then she made another dress which was suitable for a catwalk, and she called it Queen Quarantina. And then she made an extravagant gown that she had imagined before, and that was called as origami riba. So this is the dress origami because it was made of all folds, so she named it origami. And so the figure you see here is a tennis costume. So you can see the racket here, and then you can see the wizard here. And then this was the dress, Queen Quarantina, that she prepared for the catwalk. And this she named it as a warrior. And this is the just the back side of the dress I showed you first. So this was something I found very interesting when I was just looking into articles. So I wanted to share it with you. So something I believe that some pressure brings out the best in a person, right? So again, looking at the positive side, the biggest shift in fashion has historically not come from runaway trends. So this I again stress upon here. As I already told you, நம்ம comfortable we don't push ourselves further. But when you are in a critical situation, you try to get out of it, right? So the same way, the fashion things have not, historic fashion changes have not come out just from ramp walk, but it has always followed wars and other events that disturbs the society. And I believe this pandemic is one such thing which has affected a society in a huge scale. And this is not only said by me, it's mainly said by Kimberly Chrisman Campbell. She's actually a fashion historian, and she's the author of Born on This Day, The Clothes That Made History. This is because the effect of this pandemic or the war does not go away immediately. It keeps rippling around the supply chain. It keeps rippling around the economy, around the social behavior of the people, our daily lives. And this often accelerates and normalizes changes which are already underway. So, taking a visionary approach in these difficult times may be tough, but it is definitely necessary. And we also need the support of the government, and many associations have already requested uh, the governments to go ahead with a lot of support to them. And what is mainly necessary here is a real test of mental resilience. So whoever can withstand this will come up again. It would be interesting to see if from this experience something more positive can come up. I hope and pray India can leverage this period to devise a strategic approach to becoming a global textile hub. So already we are well known, but I think we can improve ourselves here, make use of these situations here to just become the best in the world. So with this, I conclude the first part of my presentation. And so these are the references. So most of it, what I said, is not my own thoughts. I've just taken it from medias or the internet and papers. So that's what I presented to you. Anita,
Yes, ma'am.
any queries on this part, Anita?
No, ma'am. Till now, there is no queries on your first part, ma'am.
Okay. Shall we just proceed to the second one as well?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, hope I'm not boring you. But actually, this enzymatic part was my cakewalk, and Anita wanted me to do on Penril. So I hope I do justice to both topics. So the second one is enzymatic processes, a road to sustainable apparel. So most of you would be just familiar with this concept of enzymes. So I will just brush up on all this. So here, it would be very nice if we could interact, but that is not possible. So I would just try carrying on with the presentation. So I've just put the slide to show. So the first one shows how our mode of transport was a few decades ago. So even I remember I have traveled in cars to my school, or even to travel a little distance, we had to go use a bicycle or things like this. But nowadays, we have so much modes of transport, right? And the next one is your communication medias, your telephone. So earlier days, we had to make, if we wanted to talk to somebody, we had to wait for a trunk call the exchange, make a phone call, wait for them to connect us to that person, and then only talk to them. So now you have a phone, wherever you want, to the US or the Europe or wherever you want, you can just make a call immediately. Similarly, you have so much of changes in your uh, medias like your tape recorder, your television. So these televisions are also these days high tech. So your refrigerators. So I definitely don't disagree with this. We definitely need innovations. We definitely need changes. But what has done because of this is we've lost all our greenery. We've become so greedy. We've gone too much into the technology that we're just polluting our nature. So this rapid industrialization, so this has happened at a very fast pace, and what it has started doing is it has started affecting the public health and environment. In the manufacturing of textiles, we use several chemicals in different stages of processing, which are always not eco-friendly. And these environmental issues were overlooked all these years. But however, these days, either because of the strict legislations by the government or increasing awareness among the people, the textile processing industries are under so much of pressure to shift themselves from the conventional process to the green or eco-friendly processing techniques. And this biotechnology has played an important role in this environmental friendly benign technology. And in biotechnology itself, enzymes have come to the forefront when we especially talk about textile processing. So, what is an enzyme? So, these enzymes are nothing but they are natural proteins which are composed of about 200 to 250 amino acids. These are produced by all living organisms. So, when you eat something, you digest it, right? So, that is because of the enzymes. So, similarly, all living cells produce these enzymes. It may be either from the plant tissue or animal, or it can be from the microorganism. When we look at the properties of enzymes, physically we say the enzymes are colloidal in nature, and chemically they're proteins. Enzymes, they have high molecular weight and they become inactive at high temperatures. They are active only in the limited pH range, and the range of specificity varies from enzyme to enzyme. So by this I mean it's not that all enzymes are active at a pH 6 or all enzymes are active at a pH of 7. So this will vary based on the enzyme. So it will vary on how the enzyme was manufactured, at what temperature, from what source it was taken. And again, the enzymes are biodegradable. So biodegradable meaning it causes no pollution. And these enzymes are also inhibited by cyanide, sulfides, etc. And these enzymatic reactions are reversible. When we look at the salient features of enzymes, these accelerate reactions. Accelerates means it speeds up your reaction by actually lowering down your activation energy. The enzyme remains intact, nothing happens to the enzyme. So at the end of the reaction, you can see the enzyme as such, and so we call this as a catalyst. They act only on specific substrate. It acts on starch and not on cellulose. So when you do desizing, I mean, and so the strength loss is not there. But when you use chemicals, it will be the other way. After some time, it will start acting on the cellulose as well. So the fabric will be damaged. And in the enzymatic process, the operation carries out at a milder condition. So we said it has particular temperature and pH. So normally those are mild conditions, and they can also replace harsh chemicals. So for sodium hydroxide, if you think you're using discovery, so here you can use it, replace it with enzyme or an acid in desicing, etc. They are also again safe and easy to control. So as we said, once you raise your temperature beyond the particular limit, its activity will stop. They are biologically degradable. So once they're biologically degradable, it causes no toxic waste and no pollution, and it saves water. So we'll see how we'll see it in the later slides. It's better and more uniform affinity for dyes. It contributes to safer working conditions through elimination of chemical treatments during the production process. So if we look into the lock and key mechanism of the enzyme, so we say, right, every lock has a specific key. You cannot open all the locks with one particular key. Similarly, when you see here, this is the enzyme and this is the active site of the enzyme and this is the substrate. So you can see when the substrate comes near it, this does not match, right? So then no reaction takes place. In this case, this active site matches with the substrate, and so this joins together, opening up the door for the reaction. So this diagram is just a repetition of that. So here is the enzyme. So here is the active site. So you can see like a puzzle, you can see a product. If this is able to just match with it, then it forms an enzyme substrate complex, and then this reaction takes place and then it breaks up. You can see the enzyme is not altered at all. It's just left as such, and the product you have a different one from that of the substrate. So this is what we call it as the enzyme mechanism. So this is just another figure showing you the same thing. So this enzyme just forms a pocket-like thing. So where both of them get together, so it creates a place where both are near, and so helping in the reaction. There are a number of factors which influence the enzyme activity. One is the concentration, the other one is the temperature, pH, activators, and inhibitors. So first, let's look into the concentration. So in the beginning, the velocity of the enzyme increases. That is, the speed of the enzyme increases, and it's directly proportional to the enzyme concentration. Okay, so once you increase the enzyme concentration, the activity increases. But after a particular level, you can see it reaches a plateau. Okay, after that, there's no point in just increasing your enzyme concentration. Temperature, again, we call this as a bell-shaped curve. So every enzyme will have a particular optimum temperature at which its activity is maximum. Before or after that, it slows down. Similarly, in pH also, it will have an optimum pH. So on both the sides, the activity will be low. Activators, there are some things like magnesium, calcium, and anions like chlorine, which can actually increase the activity of the enzymes. And alkalis, antiseptics, acid, and acid liberating agents, they tend to inhibit the enzyme activity. This is mainly because these inhibitors, they have an affinity towards the enzyme, and so they compete with the substrate. So to classify the enzymes, you can classify it into 6 types: oxidoreductases, transferases, hydrolases, lyases, isomerases, and lipases. So in oxidoreductase, oxidation reduction mainly takes place. So depending upon what is the action you want to do, you can select it. And this hydrolase, mainly bond breakage and hydrolysis is done. So these are the enzymes that we normally use in textile processing. Again, types of enzymes, if you see, cellulose, it's used mainly to break down cellulose. Hemicellulose, it breaks down hemicellulose. Xylanase, it breaks down the xylene and gummy sugar. Amylase, it breaks down starches and other carbohydrates into basic sugars. Protease, it breaks down proteins. Lipases, it breaks down the fats. So these are again the enzymes which we use commonly in textiles. So the next part, seen about the introduction to enzymes, so how they are used in textile processing. They can be used in almost all the processes that are done in the textile industry, like desicing, coloring, bleaching, bleach cleanup, biopolishing, stone washing, silk decoming, shrink proofing of wool, and wool carbonizing. So I think all of you would be familiar with all this, so I don't have to go deep into this. So desizing is a process which is done to cotton yarns, mainly to withstand, sizing is done mainly to cotton yarns to withstand stress and strain during weaving. But this becomes a hindrance during dyeing. So that will be removed by the process called as desizing. So normally acids will be used. So instead of acids, we can use an enzyme called as amylase. So this breaks down the dietary starch to short chain sugars, dextrins, and maltose, and they are starch specific, so they will not affect your cellulose. So this desizing has been done for years using enzymes. And the advantages, if you see, because they are specific reactions, it has no adverse effect on cellulose and better strength retention. The process time can be reduced, okay, compared to your conventional process. The reaction takes place at a lower temperature and milder conditions, so you will not be wasting on your energy. You can save up on your energy. The feel of the fabric is also much softer compared to the conventional treatment. The BOD and COD is also reduced. Neutralization is not required here, therefore no zero salt formation in the eating. Um, Next, if you see is covering, this all of us know it's a removal of hydrophobic matter from cotton, and we use sodium hydroxide, which is a very strong alkali. So instead of that, we can use enzyme pectinase. Sometimes it's used even along with lipase. So what it does is it attacks the cuticle primary wall and digests the pectin into water-soluble fragments, which can be washed away in subsequent washing. While doing so, the other impurities which are held by the pectin and the fibers are also removed, leaving the fabric with excellent softness and good absorbency. If you see what are the advantages of the enzymatics covering or bios covering, so all the processes that we do using enzymes, they add the word bio. There's no fiber damage. It's a milder process, better dye uptake. It saves energy and water, lower effluent load like the salt, BOD, and COD, less weight loss, less reliance on aggressive chemicals. It's compatible. You can combine it with other processes. The handle is very soft and enzymatics covering compared to your alkalines covering. So bleaching, it converts your glucose to gluconic acid and hydrogen peroxide. Again, this will be combined with desizing and scouring. But this enzyme is quite expensive and it's not very much used in the industries. The next process is bleach cleanup. So we normally know hydrogen peroxide is a universal bleaching agent and that is the most often used in the industry. But to achieve high quality dyeing, this hydrogen peroxide needs to be removed completely. So in conventional process, what they do is they keep on rinsing the fabric. They use hot water and so on. So you have to use energy. You waste upon a lot of water. We know how scarce water is these days. So and even then, it doesn't guarantee complete removal of hydrogen peroxide. In enzymatic processing, only one high temperature rinse is enough, and after that, what you do is in the next wash, you just use a little bit of catalyst in the rinse water. So that degrades your residual peroxide into water and oxygen. So this process is both ecologically as well as economically advantageous. Again, similar to the other one, the reaction products are only oxygen and water, so ecologically friendly, so less TDS and COD. Very low dosage of catalase is only required, and reduce chemical load as well. So less water usage, up to 19,000 liters per ton of textile, you can save. Next is biopolishing. So this is actually a finishing technique. So we know the cotton fibers and all, they have a protruding surface because of the microfibers, right? So when you keep on using a fabric, after some time you can find filling being formed, and that gives an what does not give a neat appearance to your garments. This problem is eliminated by usually a singeing process where the fabric is passed at a very high pace over fire. But here the problem of the fabric catching fire or getting scorched is there. So in biopolishing, what we do is we use an enzyme called the cellulase. This actually hydrolyzes the microfibers which protrude from the fabric surface. So it weakens it and breaks them easily from the main fiber. Therefore, you get a fabric surface which is smoother than what it was before. The advantage is that it's resistant to pilling, and this is a permanent process. You have a very clear, lint-free, fuss-free surface. It enhances the look, feel, and color. It improves the breathability and softness. Stone washing. We know all of us will definitely have at least one garment made of denim, right? And to get that what faded look, we do a process called as stone washing. So usually what is done is pumic stones were used. So they run these denim fabrics along with fabric or garment along with the pumic stones in large washing machines. So here, instead of those pumic stones, you can use the enzyme called the cellulase. Cellulase enzymes can reduce and even eliminate the use of stones. Sometimes it's used in combination, or sometimes just avoiding stones, only cellulase is being used. So what it mainly does is it loosens the indigo dye on the woven fabric, and this process is known as biostoning. The advantage is it's gentle on the garment. So when you can imagine when the pumic stones are rubbed over the garment, even the labels or the buttons that are present there may be damaged. But here, since this enzyme will do no damage, it will do no such damage to the garment. And small doses can replace several kgs of stones. So you have to use a lot of stones, so that will also occupy space. So here, since you're using only like when the detergents marry very little enzymes and you can load more garments, so the production is also high. And again, the damage on the washing machine is also reduced here. And the pumic stones, what it will do is you can find powders coming out from that. This solid waste is also eliminated, and this is again environmental friendly. Silk decoming, we know the fibroins are stuck together by a sericin gum, and similar to desicing, before dyeing we remove this silk gum, and that is done mainly using alkali-free soaps or acids. So here you can use an enzyme called as protease to remove the sericin. And this does not attack your fibroin, it's smooth, it improves your absorbency, it also improves the whiteness of the silk fabric. The next process called as wool carbonizing. Like wool, we know is a protein fiber, and the vegetable matter present in wool will hinder the dyeing or will not give uniform dyeing. And these are removed by a process called as carbonization, where you make use of acid and then you treat it at a high temperature and then pulverize it and remove it. And this can be replaced by cellulase because it will act upon the cellulose. So this actually hydrolyzes the cellulose to water-soluble substances. This process again is harmless to the wool. So these days, even combination of cellulose, pectinase, lignase again is being used. Advantages: it does not degrade wool and it reduces the effluent load. Shrink proofing of wool. We know in wool we have the problem because of the scales. You have the felting problem. Once it keeps moving or once the temperature is raised, the shrinking problem will be there. The commercial process they use is on a chlorine or sulfuric acid, but the byproduct over there, what they get is very toxic, which is AOX, is very toxic. Here you can use an enzyme protease, which results in uniform degradation of the cuticle, thereby giving the material anti-shrinking, smooth, feel, luster, and handle properties. The advantages again, the wool is not degraded. It improves the smoothness, luster, and handle properties. Leather processing. In leather, you have to dehair, whether it is a hide or skin. The hairs have to be removed. The earlier harsh chemicals such as lime and sodium sulfide were being used. So enzymes obtain a cleaner product and higher yield with fewer chemicals. Since enzyme does not dissolve the hair as a chemical do, it is possible to filter out the hair and reduce the COD. The hides and skin contain protein and fat between the collagen fibers, and these are removed in the process of tanning. Earlier, dog or pigeon dung was being used, and this was a very unreliable and smelly process. And so now the leather industry has switched on to using bacterial protease and pancreatic trypsin for the leather processing. Again here, the environmental benefits: lower chemical load to waste system, lower odor during processing. They have better consumer benefits like better leather, lower odor process for workers and the neighbors of the factory. Again, for decolorization of dyes and bleaches, we know in effluent treatment this is a major problem. So here also lactases are widely researched for the decolorization of textile effluents. It's because they have the ability to degrade dyes on diverse structures, including synthetic dyes. Lactases are environmentally friendly to treat the dye wastewater. Softening, we know these days we talk about lot of bast fibers like banana, sisal, jute, and so on. But the main problem we face here is their roughness. Uh, so this can be overcome by doing the softening. So here we can use enzymes like lacase, cellulase, hemicellulase, and pectinase. So these are tried for softening of the bast fibers. So these are the various processes where enzymes are being used. So just to conclude, I would like to say we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children, right? So whatever we borrow has to be given back. So are we maintaining the earth in just the same as we got from our ancestors? So just ponder over this. There are too many people counting calories and not enough people counting chemicals. So mainly these days, during this pandemic, sitting back at home, eating nicely, we're all worried about the calories, how much we have put on weight and all this. But do we think of how much of pollution we create around, mainly because of our activities? So this is the second point I want you to think about. Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed. So this is the problem. Earth has given whatever we want, but we people are not satisfied with that. We are very greedy, and so that has caused a problem, so much of problem around the world. So I just leave it to you. Be an enzyme, a catalyst for change. The best wishes. So stay home, stay safe. Thank you for your patient listening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank
Neha.
thank you for your fantastic and marvelous presentation, ma'am. And
Thank you.
it's time for our questionnaire session. Ma'am, Subhatra Sangeeta Kumar has raised a question that
Okay.
whether the cost effectiveness of the enzymatic process will be feasible towards commercial use.
See, compared to chemicals, it's definitely a little bit on the expensive side, and it's not all enzymes are expensive, right? So when you go on to the amylase and all that, you get it at a very cheap rate. And as I already told you, what you use the glucose oxidase, what you use for bleaching is on the higher side. Okay, but what I believe is once a production is low, definitely anything is expensive. So once it becomes a regular use, it will meet out the cost. So, and next point I would like to stress on is we have to consider what is important to us, the pollution or the cost, right?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I definitely think that enzyme is not all that expensive that we cannot bear with it.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, then that warrior dress was really nice and fantastic, ma'am. It was a good
Which one? Ma?
information. That
Which one?
warrior Orangana dress.
Yeah, that I impressed me so much. So that's why I wanted to include it somewhere in my presentation.
Okay, ma'am. That was a very good informativeness to all, ma'am. Then we can see the positive sense towards technical textiles.
Yeah,
That presentation is very useful to all, ma'am.
yeah.
And next, we can see that your experience and your publication, edition of books, everything in your presentation with a reference of many number of articles that shows your international and national level presentation, ma'am. And especially, I can see your 25 years experience of teaching in this presentation. Thanks a lot, ma'am. This was a
Thank
very
you.
informative session to our and we, the Department of Apparel Manufacturing and Merchandising, all are very grateful to your wonderful presentation, ma'am. Especially Mr. V. Rajendran, Mr. P. Shankarakartikeyan, and myself, Ms. Dr. N. Shivakumar, Dr. K. Prabhakumari, Dr. E. Alivalagan, and P. Mageshwari, all are very grateful for your informative session and a useful session, ma'am. And then another queries is in the third question in the Dropbox, ma'am. Biopolishing is what sort of enzymes will be used for biopolishing, ma'am?
We use cellulase enzyme
Okay,
because we
okay,
mainly do this for cotton fabric, right?
yes, ma'am.
So the cotton is the one which is having the fibers protruding outside. So
Okay,
since that is the cellulose base, so you
yes,
use an enzyme called the cellulase for biopolishing.
Okay, fine. Thank you, ma'am. And future, there will be a very great intention towards technical textile, ma'am.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Thank you for your wonderful session, ma'am. And
Thank
dear participants, please find the feedback link on the chat box and fill, and it will be available only for the 30 minutes. And now it's time to thank all. Now I could like to call upon Dr. N. Shivakumar, Department of Apparel Manufacturing and Merchandising, to present the vote of thanks.
Good morning to all. I take it pleasure to thank our management and principal for supporting us to organize the webinar successfully. It's my honor to thank our resource person, Dr. K. Karpagam Chindamal, who has come overall to the hardships for scheduling her time for us. Thank you, ma'am. Then I would like to thank the head of the department, my colleagues, various department faculties, technical staff, and Mr. N. Alasami sir for accomplishing the webinar successfully. Next, I will fail if I did not that the participants, my heartfelt thanks for the participants who have patiently made this session very useful. Once again, I thank all who have directly and indirectly made the successful. Thank you once again.
All you just stuck on to the time. Started exactly at 11 and finished at 12. So appreciation.
Yes, ma'am.